The boardroom doors slammed behind me with a sound that seemed to echo through my entire body. My CEO, Marcus, leaned back in his leather chair like he owned the laws of physics themselves. He flipped a revised pay slip across the mahogany table with the casual indifference of someone tossing trash. Tierna, I've decided to cut your pay. Honestly, you're replaceable. The words didn't just land. They exploded. I watched the faces of everyone in that room shift instantly. My team's eyes darted between Marcus and me, searching for a reaction. Shock. Humiliation. Rage. I felt every single emotion fire through my nervous system at once. My heart pounded so hard I thought everyone could hear it. My hands clenched into fists so tight my nails dug crescents into my palms. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't flip the table or storm out like they probably expected. Instead, I just stared at that pay slip. 20% cut. Just like that. After everything I'd done for this company. After the nights I'd stayed until midnight fixing his disasters. After the clients I'd kept satisfied when his decisions had nearly destroyed relationships that took years to build. I was replaceable. That's what he thought. That's what he wanted everyone to believe. Marcus leaned forward, clearly enjoying the performance of it all. I need someone with fresh eyes on these projects. You? He paused, letting the silence stretch like he was a director timing a scene perfectly. You're not leadership material. Every word cut deeper than the pay cut itself. This wasn't business. This was personal. I could feel the heat crawling up my neck, burning my cheeks. But it wasn't embarrassment. It was fury. Pure, cold fury. The kind that doesn't make you scream. It makes you think. The kind that doesn't make you quit. It makes you plan. I'd heard rumors about this coming. Everyone had. Marcus had brought in his golf buddy, Trevor, 2 weeks ago as a strategic consultant. Trevor had never run anything bigger than a golf tournament committee. But Marcus loved him. They talked about expansion, about cutting costs, about moving in a bold new direction. And apparently, bold new direction meant cutting my pay and publicly humiliating me in front of the people I'd been leading. I could see my team waiting to see what I'd do. Would I fight back? Would I argue? Would I defend myself? I did none of those things. I just stood up, nodded once, and walked out of that boardroom. What they didn't know was that walk toward the door was actually a walk toward something else entirely. I left the room with perfect composure, but inside, a storm was raging. I could feel it building like a tornado gathering strength over the plains. My team watched me go, confusion and concern written all over their faces. I didn't acknowledge any of them. Not yet. I walked back to my office, shut the door, and sat at my desk in complete silence for exactly 5 minutes. During those 5 minutes, I wasn't spiraling. I was observing. I was mapping. Like a chess player who takes a moment after an unexpected move to study the entire board and plan 17 moves ahead. I thought about Marcus's weaknesses. I thought about his relationships. I thought about the investor who'd called me last month asking my opinion about the company's direction. I thought about my team and who among them was truly loyal versus who would jump ship if the water got warm. I began taking mental notes, categorizing information, identifying patterns. Marcus was arrogant. That was his first weakness. He thought cutting my pay publicly would humiliate me into compliance or resignation. He didn't understand that humiliation needs a witness to matter. And in a boardroom full of people I'd trained, that witness was actually seeing him expose himself, not me. His second weakness was that he had no one he actually trusted. He was too suspicious, too competitive, too desperate to be the smartest person in every room. That meant he was isolated. Vulnerable. And I'd just figured out exactly how to exploit that. Sitting at my desk, I stared at that revised payslip. Numbers seemed smaller now. The reduction from my salary felt like it should have devastated me. But instead, it clarified something crucial. Money had never been why I stayed. I'd stayed because I believed in the company. I'd stayed because I thought my work mattered. I'd stayed because I believed in the people I'd hired and trained and mentored. Marcus had just revealed that none of that mattered to him. He saw transactions, not relationships. He saw costs, not value. He saw me as replaceable, which meant I finally felt permission to stop protecting what I'd built on his behalf. For a moment, I felt genuinely powerless. The moment lasted exactly as long as I allowed it. Then the ember of determination sparked inside me. I wasn't going to react recklessly. I wasn't going to quit in anger or send a viral email or start badmouthing him on LinkedIn. That's what he expected. That's what weak people do. I was going to do something far more dangerous. I was going to plan. I was going to wait. I was going to rebuild everything I'd created, but this time for myself. I pulled out a blank notebook. I titled the first page "The Next 30 Days." Below that, I wrote a single word. Restructure. Then I began listing everything I needed to do. Not react. Observe. Not fight. Build. Not defend myself. Position myself. The next month was going to be the most important month of my professional life. And Marcus had no idea the clock was already running. The first thing I needed to understand was my team. I'd hired most of them myself. I'd trained them. I'd invested in their development. But loyalty isn't automatic, and I needed to know who would follow me if things got complicated. Over the next 3 days, I had subtle conversations. Nothing obvious. Just normal check-ins that happened to reveal which people were frustrated with Marcus and which people were still buying his vision. I learned quickly. The core team, about 8 people, were secretly furious. They'd watched him disrespect me. They'd felt the instability of his leadership. But they were also scared. Fear makes people paralyzed. They needed permission to be loyal to something other than the company. They needed to know there was a path forward that didn't end in unemployment. I didn't tell them that path yet. I just listened. I asked about their families, their goals, their frustrations. I acknowledged what they were experiencing without revealing my hand. One conversation stood out. Michael, my head of product development, pulled me aside after a meeting. "That was brutal, what he did," he said quietly. I just nodded. "Don't let it make you leave. We need you." I smiled without smiling. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. That was true. But what he didn't understand was that I wasn't staying here either. I was building something new, and the question was whether he wanted to help me build it. I gave him time to think about that without actually asking. Every meeting became data collection. Every email, every board presentation, every casual conversation was a piece of a larger puzzle I was constructing. I started cataloging things. Marcus's errors. His missed deadlines. His over-reliance on a single investor named Vincent Chen for capital and validation. His tendency to make promises he couldn't keep. His habit of taking credit for other people's work while delegating blame downward. Slowly, a map of weaknesses formed in my mind. But more importantly, I started mapping relationships. Who talked to the investors? Who had the ear of the board? Who actually made decisions versus who just pretended? I discovered something crucial. Vincent Chen, the investor Marcus acted like he had complete control over, actually spent most of his time talking to me. These conversations had started months ago, back when Vincent wanted to understand the company's operations. Marcus didn't know about the depth of these conversations. He thought Vincent's confidence in him was absolute. What I knew was that Vincent's confidence in the company had nothing to do with Marcus. It had everything to do with me and the team I'd built. Vincent had told me multiple times that he invested in people, not ideas. He said good ideas were common. Excellent execution was rare. And he saw execution in my work. That detail was going to matter very soon. I had side projects that Marcus had always mocked. Small ideas about product expansion, ways to better serve underutilized market segments, strategies for building recurring revenue. He dismissed them as ambitious but not strategic. What he really meant was that they threatened his vision of the company. He wanted steady growth that made him look good. I wanted transformational growth that changed the industry. During the late nights when I used to work on company projects, I started spending that time on my own ideas instead. Not out of spite. Out of necessity. These ideas were becoming a backup plan. If this company imploded, I needed something. But more importantly, these ideas were good. Really good. The kind of good that investors get excited about. The kind that solve actual problems. I worked on them alone in my apartment, on my personal laptop, with my own money. Every line of code, every spreadsheet, every business plan was entirely mine. Marcus would never know they existed. And that detail was going to be the most important thing about them. I made a decision. I was going to let Marcus succeed just enough that he stayed comfortable, but fail just enough that Vincent started noticing problems. It's a delicate balance, but I'd been watching him for months. I understood the mechanics. In the next team meeting, when Marcus pushed for a strategy one knew was flawed, I didn't argue. I just asked clarifying questions that revealed the flaws without me having to attack him. So, we're scaling customer acquisition, I said thoughtfully, but are we actually ready for the support burden? Our infrastructure isn't designed for that volume. He dismissed the concern. But Vincent, sitting in the back of the room, didn't miss it. I saw him make a note. The next week, when Marcus bragged about closing a deal, I smiled and congratulated him. Then privately, I sent Vincent a detailed breakdown of why that deal might not be as profitable as it appeared. Not as an attack. As information. As data. I wasn't undermining Marcus. I was just ensuring that decision-makers had complete information. Real information. Information that came from someone who actually understood operations. Small victories, but they were adding up. The team started coming to me for guidance instead of Marcus. Not openly. Subtly. A question about a project direction. A concern about timeline. A request for advice on how to handle a difficult client. Marcus didn't notice because he didn't pay attention to the details. He was too busy with the big vision and the investor lunches. But I was keeping track. Every time someone came to me, I helped them. I didn't tell them they should doubt Marcus. I just offered better solutions than Marcus had provided. The word spread quietly through the company. Tirna fixes things. Tirna understands the strategy. Tirna actually knows what she's talking about. And Marcus? Marcus delegates and disappears. The whispers of his favoritism toward Trevor started circulating naturally. People noticed that Trevor did no actual work but attended every meeting. They noticed that Marcus treated my suggestions with skepticism but Trevor's half-baked ideas with enthusiasm. I never started those conversations. I just never stopped them either. Influence grew silently but visibly. My team was transforming from a group that worked for a company into a group that would work for me. The only question was when to make that transition explicit. Vincent invited me to lunch. Just me. Not Marcus. I knew what this meant. I sat across from him at a small Italian restaurant near the office, and he didn't waste time on small talk. How much longer are you staying at the company? He asked directly. I'd prepared for this question without knowing it was coming. That depends on several things, I said. I love the work. I love the team. But I need to work with people I trust to make good decisions. He nodded like I'd confirmed something he already suspected. Marcus has been great for investor relations, Vincent said carefully. But between you and me, I'm concerned about his operational judgment. I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence sit. Then I said something crucial. The company could be worth 3 times what it currently is. Maybe 4 times. But that requires someone who understands both the product and the market. Someone willing to take intelligent risks instead of safe bets. Vincent leaned back. Are you that person? I met his eyes. I know exactly what this company is capable of. And I know the path to get there. But I'm not doing it from a position where my pay gets cut and my ideas get mocked. He smiled. Not a cruel smile. An understanding smile. I'll be in touch, he said. And I knew the game had shifted. The investor just confirmed he was prepared to change his allegiance if I gave him a reason to. I'd given him a reason. Marcus kept talking about how replaceable I was. I heard about it through the office gossip chain. He'd apparently told multiple investors that people like me were a dime a dozen and that real visionaries came from outside the company. What he didn't understand was that every time he said those things, he was positioning himself as the kind of leader people would abandon if they got the chance. He thought he was building confidence in himself. He was actually destroying it. I watched him brag to a room of consultants about how much the company had accomplished under his leadership. I watched them nod politely while clearly recognizing that he was taking credit for work others had done. He was transparent to everyone except himself. The bigger he acted, the more visible his insecurity became. And there's something about insecurity dressed up as confidence that makes people lose trust in a person gradually and then all at once. I started having strategic one-on-one conversations with my strongest team members. Michael from product. Sarah from operations. Thomas from business development. Not all at once. Spread out over several days. I didn't tell them my plan. I didn't even suggest that we should leave. I just asked them about their dreams. What did they want to build? Where did they see their careers going? What would make them excited to come to work? They poured their hearts out. They talked about features they wanted to build. Markets they wanted to explore. Problems they wanted to solve. And then I'd say something like, I've been thinking about something similar. Those conversations built alignment without revealing an endgame. I was creating a team of people who wanted the same thing. We just hadn't admitted yet that thing was building our own future instead of contributing to Marcus's. A major client crisis emerged. It was exactly the kind of situation that separates real leaders from pretenders. A product bug had caused data loss for one of our most important customers. This was catastrophic. This was the kind of thing that ends contracts and destroys reputations. Marcus went into panic mode. He called a meeting. He demanded solutions. He blamed people. He created more chaos. I observed all of this without saying much. Then I took action. I called the client directly. I apologized personally. I explained exactly what had happened, why it happened, and what we were doing to fix it. I spent 3 hours with their team ensuring they understood we took this seriously and would rebuild their trust. By the next morning, I not only fixed the technical issue but also implemented safeguards to prevent it from happening again. The client didn't just stay. They became an advocate. They told other investors about how I'd handled the crisis. Marcus watched all of this happen. He tried to take credit in the board meeting. But everyone knew the truth. The team knew. The client knew. The investors knew. I was the one who'd actually solved the problem while he'd been flailing around creating more stress. Vincent called again. This time he wanted to meet Marcus and me together. The three of us sat in a private conference room, and Vincent asked pointed questions about the company's direction. Marcus answered with vague strategy speak. I answered with specific numbers, timelines, and market data. Vincent watched us ping-pong back and forth. Then he said something that changed the trajectory. Tierna, if you could invest your own money into the company, would you? I didn't hesitate. Not as it's currently structured. But if I could take the core team and the ideas we've developed and build something new? Absolutely. Marcus's face went pale. He sensed the ground shifting but didn't understand why. Vincent thanked us both and said he needed to think about some things. I knew he wasn't thinking. He was deciding. And I'd just made it clear what decision I was hoping for. I started subtly highlighting opportunities to Vincent that Marcus had overlooked. A market expansion that could increase revenue by 40%. A partnership that would accelerate growth. A product pivot that would address an underserved segment. I presented these as ideas in progress, not as criticisms of Marcus's vision. But Vincent understood what I was doing. I was showing him a path where the company could achieve extraordinary things if it had different leadership. Each conversation planted a seed. Not aggressive seeds. Patient seeds. Seeds that would grow into the realization that Marcus's leadership was the constraint, not the catalyst. Michael pulled me aside one afternoon. Whatever you're building next, he said quietly, I want to be part of it. Sarah said the same thing the next day. Then Thomas. Then the rest of the core team. Not because I'd asked them to join a rebellion. But because they'd come to the same conclusion independently. They could see the pattern. Marcus was becoming less relevant. The decisions that mattered were made by other people. And they wanted to be where the decisions were made. They wanted to be where someone actually listened to their ideas instead of mocking them. I told them to stay calm. To keep doing their jobs excellently. To not do anything that would alert Marcus. But to prepare themselves for change. A product presentation to a major potential client went badly. Marcus had insisted on using his vision against my advice, and it fell flat. The client asked pointed questions that exposed the weakness of the strategy. I watched Marcus fumble. Then diplomatically, I intervened. I guided the conversation. I showed the client how their actual needs aligned with a different approach. I repositioned the solution. By the end of the meeting, the client was interested again. Marcus's face was a masterpiece of suppressed rage. He'd been exposed, and I'd been the one to fix it. The client specifically asked for me to lead the project implementation. Not Marcus. Not Trevor. Me. That was the moment when Marcus realized something fundamental had shifted. He just didn't know how to fix it. Vincent's calls became more frequent. He wanted my thoughts on market positioning. He wanted my assessment of our product roadmap. He wanted my opinion on hiring decisions. What Vincent was actually doing was building a paper trail. He was creating documentation of my strategic thinking and leadership capability. He was establishing that I, not Marcus, was the person running the company operationally. He was preparing the justification for a decision he'd already made. I started suggesting ideas in investor meetings with incredible subtlety. A small comment about market opportunity. A gentle question about why we hadn't pursued a certain direction. A brief observation about competitor advantages. Each suggestion was structured so that it made Vincent think about strategic gaps. Each suggestion pointed to areas where Marcus's leadership was failing to see or execute. I wasn't attacking Marcus. I was just ensuring that the gaps in his vision were increasingly visible. And I was positioning myself as the person who saw the gaps that mattered. My team began treating me as the de facto leader. Not officially. Not in titles or org charts. But functionally. When there was a decision to make, they came to me. When there was a direction to set, I set it. When there was a crisis to manage, I managed it. Marcus was still technically the CEO. But everyone in the company knew the real leadership came from me. He'd been reduced to a figurehead, and the only thing keeping him in the position was his relationship with Vincent. But that relationship was cracking. I proposed something to Vincent that would solve multiple problems at once. A strategic pivot that would increase company valuation significantly. A restructuring that would better align incentives. A partnership strategy that would open new markets. Vincent loved it. He asked me to develop it further. In private. Not with Marcus. Just me. I spent the next week building the most comprehensive strategic plan I'd ever created. This wasn't a plan for Marcus's company. This was a plan for the company I was going to build. Everything aligned. The investor was ready. The team was ready. The market conditions were right. The timing was perfect. My plan was complete. And Marcus was still operating under the belief that he had control. I scheduled a presentation to Vincent and the board for the following Friday. I called it a strategic opportunity review. Marcus would be there. He'd think it was a normal board meeting. But it was actually going to be the moment when everything changed. Friday arrived. I walked into the boardroom carrying a presentation deck that represented 4 weeks of work, strategy, and calculated relationship building. Marcus was already seated, confident, looking like he owned the room. Vincent sat at the opposite end of the table, and I could see something different in his expression. Anticipation. I stood up and began presenting. Not my ideas. Our ideas. The ideas of the team I'd built. The vision we shared for what this company could become. Each slide showed what was possible. Each slide demonstrated that the company was capable of extraordinary things. And each slide was structured to show that those things required unified leadership. Marcus watched the presentation with growing confusion. This wasn't what he'd expected. This wasn't a review of his strategic choices. This was a presentation of an alternative vision. A better vision. A vision led by me and supported by every member of the team standing in the room. By the time I finished, there was no question about what had happened. The presentation was so strong, so comprehensive, so clearly better than anything Marcus had outlined, that the choice became obvious. Vincent spoke first. This is exceptional work, Tierna. This is what I've been hoping to see. Then he turned to Marcus. I'm going to be honest. I came to this company because I saw potential. I stayed because I saw Tierna execute on that potential. But leadership requires more than titles and investor relationships. Marcus tried to interrupt. Vincent raised his hand. The board and I have made a decision. Tierna will be taking over as CEO effective immediately. You're welcome to stay as a consultant, but your decision-making authority is being transferred. The team has already agreed to this transition. Marcus's face went through every emotion at once. Shock. Rage. Humiliation. He'd been replaced, and the worst part was that it happened not through mutiny or confrontation, but through my team simply deciding they'd rather follow me. He'd called me replaceable. He'd cut my pay. He'd humiliated me publicly. And in return, I'd built a team so loyal they chose me the moment I demonstrated what was possible. He stood up without saying anything and walked out of the room. I walked away from that moment not as a rejected employee seeking revenge. I walked away as the founder of something new. The team that had followed Marcus because they had no choice was now following me because they chose to. The investor who'd been skeptical of our vision was now fully committed to it. And the company I'd built was now mine to actually run. I hadn't destroyed Marcus through conflict or confrontation. I'd made him irrelevant by showing everyone what leadership actually looked like. I hadn't just survived betrayal. I'd transformed it into the foundation of everything I would build next. And the most beautiful part? Marcus was still in the building somewhere, watching as the company he thought he owned became something far greater under my guidance. I wasn't angry anymore. I was grateful. Because his dismissal had finally given me permission to stop protecting his vision and start building my own. Kindly like, share, and subscribe if you enjoy for more intriguing stories. The end.